This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Tallman Equipment, where they pride themselves on equipping their customers with the tools they need to get the job done right. They are dedicated to set the standard for quality, convenience, and reliability. At Tallman, your opinion is important to them. Rate and review any product or tool you've used on their new website at tallmanequipment.com. Line 11 Clothing Company, making apparel for our first responders with a positive message to patriots that you can be proud of. A proceed of the cost goes to helping our foundation ignite the fire for father engagement. Give them a follow at Line 11 Clothing on Instagram. And last but not least, Monzingo Knives. Each knife is created with craftsmanship that only a tradesman could provide. Find them on Instagram at Monzingo Knives and get your American-made Monzingo knife today. Welcome to the Show Up Dad. This is a podcast that's built for tradesmen fathers who are hardworking. Our special guest today is none other than Vladimir Bilik Jr. Vladimir has been married to his wife, Susanna, for 17 years. Together, they have two children, a son, Boston, who's 15 years old, and a daughter, Kaya, who's 14 years old. Vladimir's parents immigrated from Czechoslovakia back to New Jersey in 1969. They moved to Santa Clarita, California in 1984. Now, Vladimir is starting to transition into line work. Before that, he was a truck driver where he had been featured in numerous magazines, articles, and Travel Channel, and even earned a spot on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Okay. From 1993, he drove trucks for around 20 years. That's a long time for him to be driving trucks. That's awesome. But he transitioned to line work now in 2015, has now earned a place as an first step apprentice at the JATC at Cal Nevada Apprenticeship, probably the best apprenticeship out there in the country. So I want to welcome you to the Show Up Dad, Vladimir. Once again, dude, thank you for coming on, brother. And just thank you, bro.
Thank you, Dave, for that introduction. Pleasure for me to be here with you.
Absolutely, Vladimir. Can you go ahead and tell us about your childhood and what you remember about your father's presence and the impact he had in your life, if you don't mind?
Sure. My dad, like you explained, my mom and dad, they came here in 1969, year before I was born, in New Jersey. Lived out there for 14 years until we moved out here to California. The early part of my life, I just remember my dad working a lot. So a lot of graveyard shifts. He used to work at a carton printing plant. They used to make like milk cartons, big assembly plant. I mean, big assembly line. And, him coming over here from another country must not have been very easy for him. I know it wasn't easy for me because, as a child coming into kindergarten, I only spoke one language, and that was Czechoslovakian. So that language barrier affected us both, as a young kid, for me, and my father being a young immigrant coming over from Czechoslovakia. He was, like I said, he was a really hardworking guy that I think that's where my brother and I both get our work ethic from. Like, that's the one thing I know I've taken from my dad. He was very, I'd love to sit here and say how, he was instrumental in a lot of the things, but I think that work ethic plays such a huge role in life forever. But he grew up in that communist regime, where I think a lot of it was just fathers were different over there, and so when he came here, I not that we were ever treated bad. He never laid a hand on me or my brother, but I knew when he said something, it meant something. And all my mom ever had to tell me was, hey, wait till your dad gets home. And that's all I needed to know. And that was that's something I've carried on through with my kids, that I've never needed to, do anything outside of just let them know what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And hopefully that, sticks with them.
Man, that's awesome, because you hardly ever see that anymore. You know what I mean? Nowadays, kids are highly disrespectful. They don't honor their parents anymore or anything like that. And it's kind of crazy because the way you described your childhood, your father just had to give you that look. And that's the same thing with me. My father just had to give me that look. And I knew you're going to pay the man. You know what I mean? And we would stop, you know what I mean? And I think that's that level of fear, and not really fear, but respect for your elders, you know?
Absolutely. Respect is the word. Yes. Like I said, my mom said, wait till he gets home. It was over.
Right.
that was like getting a spanking, I guess, you know, it's just like, wait till your dad, oh shoot. Then I'm just hoping and praying that she forgets to remind him of whatever I had done wrong. So.
No, absolutely, brother. What are some of the things that your father taught you that you continue to share with your children? You know, I know you said work ethic, that was one of the big things, but what else can you share with us?
You know, there was always I kind of want to put this the right way again, because my dad was very, I don't want to say closed off, but we didn't have very many heart to hearts, you know? So it was more of me watching what he did. And it's kind of the way I think it has way more value for your kids to see what you do as opposed to what they say, which of course you want to learn lessons, you want to have conversations. And I do that like crazy with my kids, because going back to what you just asked me is, I didn't have a lot of that with my dad. You know, I didn't have that one-on-one, heart-to-heart, hey, dad, you know, going through high school, dealing with girls, playing sports. You know, my dad wasn't an athlete. You know, he went into the service right out of high school over there, you know, and then he came over here right after that. Like his life was just boom, 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 changed dramatically. So, you know, but I just remember simple little things like him telling me a story about when he was in school and they used to pick on this girl. Simple story, but for whatever reason, it constantly reminds me to remind my kids that always treat other people the way you want to be treated. You know, don't pick on somebody because they may be less than you or whatever issues they may have, and your friends may bully them. Just remember that you don't like to be treated that way yourself. So treat others the way you want to be treated. And it's something that I probably repeat once a week with my kids, you know, and it's not much more than that, honestly. I'd love to say, oh, you know, my dad this, my dad was a great man. Like everybody loved him. Like he was just that guy that, you know, if there was something going on, they invited my dad. He was funny, you know, but as far as just with me and him, you know, even with my brother, it felt like I was more of the father figure for my brother growing up. Like when I came through high school, my brother was 4.5 years younger than me. So he had just stepped into high school when I stepped out. And it was kind of me constantly, you know, pushing him and doing for him, I guess, what I wanted my dad to do for me, you know, motivating him that like, hey, don't give up, don't quit. Hey, if the coach wants you to run 3 miles, run 4, you know, run the extra mile, set an example for the other guys on your team because you're the captain, you know, and just, I guess, you know, take it for, you know, good or bad. But I know I look at it like a positive because I've known since when my kids were born, and my wife and I talked about it. I go, I will never be closed off to my kids. I want them to be able to talk to me about anything. I don't want them to ever not know something or get themselves in a position because they were afraid to ask me, you know, so that's the biggest thing.
And it's so good to see that you recognize that in your father, not saying that your dad is bad or anything, you know, because my father was the same way, you know what I mean? I don't know if it was that generation or whatever, you know, that mindset where, you know, they rather have you watch, you know, lead by what they do versus tell you something, you know, and it's good to see that you saw where there was an imbalance and you made the corrections, you made that shift, and you didn't want that in your children. So you're keeping that healthy balance between them, you know what I mean? Where you're showing them by being an example and also, you know, substituting that other part that you didn't get with your father with, you know, just giving them those affirmations that they need, you know, because kids do need those affirmations, you know what I mean? Attaboys they go a long way, bro.
Yeah. Yes, they do.
You know, I'm sure you saw that even with the, you know, the climbing week that we had at the apprenticeship yard, you know what I mean? Where the instructors are walking around encouraging you, come on, man, you know, step up in your belt, you know, come on, you can do this, you know, come on, and stuff like that. You know, those little affirmations help, you know.
Absolutely. You know, you think it's just small words, but those small words mean a lot, you know, and especially like with my daughter, you know, it was just my brother and I. So having a daughter is kind of an eye opener, you know, when you weren't really around girls, you know, or you know, it's just different that they really are such different creatures than we are. So,
Oh yeah.
and as a father, it's really like walking on eggshells, like, because I want my daughter to be able to come to me about anything. And I mean, it's great that like there's times, like even now, like we'll wake up in the morning on like this morning, hey, I'm gonna go grab breakfast. Hey, and now it's gotten to the point where like she'll just ask me if I can go with you. I'm like, of course. I'm just gonna go through the drive-through. She knows I'm gonna drive down about 5 miles, go pick up some food, come back. But in those 5 miles there and back, and while waiting in line, it's always some conversation about something. How was school? Hey, are you talking to new guys? And is this going on? How was volleyball practice? There's always something going on where normally and you're in and out of the house and wake up, go to work, come back, go to sleep. You really don't even have those 5 minutes sometimes. So it's the little things like that I value.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that little one-on-one tongue, that extra critique that they need, you know what I mean? Where you get them aside by themselves and then they're able to open up, to you. And that's so important with our sons and our daughters, and you're absolutely right. Having a daughter and a boy are completely night and day,
Yes, it is.
We had a past guest on here talk about how with boys, they need to have direction. You need to have ground rules for boys, and then you could have that relationship with them, And for our daughters, we can't raise them the same way. Our daughters, they need to know that they're the apple of your eye, that you care for them, that they're on your mind, and you got to have that relationship with them. And then once you establish that, then they'll open up to you. Then they'll do, they'll do whatever you want them to do, but it's not until you establish that with our daughters that they're going to be able to do that, and it's important to have that conversation time with them and stuff like that,
You're absolutely right. Yes.
Another one of the things I wanted to ask you, Vlad, real quick is, you talked about how your parents were, immigrants. What are some of the challenges that they had to overcome? I can't, you know what I mean? I can't even imagine. I mean, it's probably hard, being an immigrant coming over.
Yeah. I think I kind of ran over it earlier, but I think the language barrier was absolutely the biggest, because for my daddy, we just lost my dad last December to cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But even until, the end, I mean, his English was always very limited. I mean, I don't know if he was just kind of stubborn to really pick up and become really, and he wasn't a very vocal man. So I guess that was part of it. He was more shy. And that's, again, tying into me, when I first started kindergarten, I came in like a foreign exchange student. I came in not speaking any English because my mom and dad only spoke Czechoslovakian at the house. So that but for me, it's a lot easier to pick up as a kid. You get around it. Yeah. Before you know it, within a month, you can speak, you can speak the language. But with my father, over the years, I think that was his biggest, but I don't think it bothered him. He kind of used it to his advantage. I mean, he dealt with antiques and this and that. So maybe people thought he didn't know what he was talking about a lot of times. And my dad was smart and shrewd when it came to that stuff. He knew exactly what he was talking about. So, but I think that really was the biggest thing. I mean, obviously, starting out, getting a job, like I can't imagine what that would be like. That'd be like to well, not today, but 25 years ago, somebody just putting me in Portugal and saying, hey, go find yourself a job, and raise for your family. Yes, you just had a kid. That's great. And now you got to support him and your wife. And, I can't imagine, that takes a lot of strength. So, for my mother and my father, they both did it. They were both working at that time when I was a kid. I was going to babysitters and, so yeah, it was a unique time. Absolutely, man.
And hats off to your father and your mother both. I mean, because you're absolutely right. I mean, coming over here and, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, and just having to provide for your family. I mean, that's a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They took a gamble, and I'm glad they took it. I mean, here I am. Here's my, my brother and I are here because of it. So, yeah. Without them, I'm in Slovakia right now. So
right.
But everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. And that adversity, you know what I mean? It makes you stronger for sure. It gives you, it builds character, Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Vlad, you've been driving for about 20 years now. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about this Peterod that was featured in all kinds of magazines and all that other stuff. Tell our audience a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Peterod was a truck, half Peterbilt, half hot rod that I had made literally from the ground up, because I ordered the truck as a stock truck back then, just spec'd it out, ordered it exactly the way I wanted it. I wanted it specifically a certain way. I wanted a black truck with an orange frame because I wanted the Harley colors incorporated into it. Mm-hmm. Still remember the salesman kind of laughing at me like, well, nobody really orders this Navajo orange. Well, I did. And and I ordered it with no cab lights, which back then was like, the only trucks that have no cab lights are car haulers, because they have the rack up on top. So the lights aren't there. They're already built into the rack. Mm-hmm. By DOT standards, you've got to have 5 cab lights up there. Well, I didn't want to have any lights up there because I wanted to order 9 custom lights and have those installed custom so they spaced out correctly. Sounds silly, but when you order a truck with 5 and you add 2 to each side, the spacing is off. And it's my OCD that would just not be okay with, it wouldn't have worked with me. Well, when we first set up my truck, I was up in Lancaster with friends of mine. We were putting everything on, from the bumper to the lights to the exhaust pipes. I had the big 8-inch pipes, put the drop visor on it. And the last thing that we were going to put on were the lights. And I looked up at my truck and I thought, that thing looks so mean with no cab lights. And they're like, well, you can't have a truck with no cab lights. It's DOT rules. I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to have all these lights on my trailer. Like, why is it going to matter? Mm-hmm. And not only that, but it was late at night and we just kind of laughed about it. And I thought, you know what? How about I just run my truck without the lights? We'll just keep the lights in the box. That's the way that truck stayed for the next 4.5 years that I had it, and it created an image, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, it became Peterod. It became what I created, which was the whole less is more theme. I mean, it went through a couple transformations and it was a true working truck, but I had suicide doors on it on remote, which didn't always bode so well when it got cold out or my battery went dead. I've got stories about that. I had the windshield wipers removed from where they normally sit at the bottom of the windshield, and I mounted them from the top to be hidden behind the custom drop-down visor, because I thought it'd be really cool to have that hot rod look to where the wipers come down from the top like an old school truck. Mm-hmm. Took all the lights off the truck, but I hid them behind stainless panels and I had them slotted. So where the LEDs shone through, you just didn't see the actual physical, you didn't see the light itself. Mm-hmm. You saw the light coming out, but the light was behind the stainless steel. Mm-hmm. So everything I did to that truck, from shaving the door handles off to hiding the wipers, the no cab lights, the clean lights around, everything was, to take off something and not really add it. I had a stainless steel floor in the truck. I had a big shifter that sat about my head. If I was sitting in my truck, the shifter was up to my head. And then I even took the splitters off the stick shift and mounted them up on the dash. I mean, I had these were all ideas that I had. It was the company out in Joplin, Peterbilt, that gets all the credit for it. They did a lot of the work. There was just ideas that I just kept flowing with, things that nobody was really doing. I just thought, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to make this truck. And I for the 4 years I had that truck, Dave, I felt like I never worked a day in my life, and I worked my tail off. I mean, it was 1,000-mile days. It was 20,000-mile months. And I did it for the entirety that I had that truck, because that's all I knew. That's the harder I ran, the more I made. Produce wasn't like a great revenue maker, but if you ran enough loads, you can make enough money, because you just keep running. You have to run to the East Coast, Massachusetts, and come back with a load that paid almost half. To grab another load of produce, which paid double, to go back out to the East Coast. And I did that by myself. I was a solo driver. I had my own authority, so I was getting my own loads. And that whole work ethic with my dad kind of tied into the way I drove my truck. I want to be the fastest, the best, get it out there. I felt like I was the reliable guy that anybody can count on. And I took great pride in it. And at the same time, I had this show truck now, because the first few years of my trucking, I had my own truck, but it wasn't this level truck. And once I had this truck, like I said, I'd wake up in the morning, somebody would notice the truck, and it's like getting into that fancy hot rod that you can't wait to take out on the weekend. You got your work schedule, you're coming home in your work truck, but then on the weekend you get to take out that fancy, sweet 63 split window Corvette, or maybe whatever you may have.
Yeah.
I felt like that every day. And
Wow.
so trucking to me and trucking with that truck was, you know, that was, I mean, I don't want to jump around too much, but that was one of the harder things for me to become adjusted to when I started driving local, that I kind of gave that up, because now I'm driving local and I didn't want to have my own truck anymore. I kind of want to just, I lucked out and I got into a really good gig with my brother. We both did, to drive local. We got brand new trucks, but they weren't that level trucks. They were just a new truck. And from 2005 until I got into this trade, 2015, we did that locally for 10 years. But I just felt like a truck driver then. You know, it was a completely different feeling of what I had with Peterod.
Yeah.
As I was stepping into this brand new truck, you know, nothing wrong with it. You know, I was home every night. That was the biggest thing though. And that's what I was getting out of in 2004, is because I got married in August. And then by the end of the year, I just kind of made up my mind that, you know, I mean, there were other things going on, personal things that were going on with the family. And I was just like, and not so much like with my wife and kids, because my kids weren't born yet. But I just knew, you know what, it's time for me to be home. I want to be home. I don't want to watch my kids, like that country song, you know, watching your kids grow up in pictures. I remember listening to that song endless times on the road, and I knew I don't want to be that guy. And it all worked out for the best. I mean, because, you know, eventually I found out where I am today, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Now, being on the road like that, anybody who's a traveler or anything like that, tramp lineman, whatever, you know, truck driver, whatever, you have a lot of windshield time and you have a lot of time to think. I did some of my best thinking while being on the road. Now, what did you learn about yourself while you're on the road? You know?
Boy. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of times that I would come home, and I don't know if it's common with a lot of people, a lot of men, but I would think about how much better of a person I was when I was thinking in that truck, because I had all these great ideas, and I thought, man, when I get home, this is what I want to do, this, and this, and this. And I don't know what it was, but why I should have just been writing this stuff down in a book as I was driving, because my mind was just flowing, because like you said, you're on your own, you're by yourself. And I enjoyed it. I mean, there's people that can't be by themselves, you know, that can't be alone without, you know, people in general. And I'm never have been that person. You know, and I was fortunate that, you know, towards the tail end of driving over the road, that my wife was very okay with it. You know, we weren't married yet actually, but we were dating for a couple of years, and she knew that was my life, that, you know, it was more than a job to me. But I think just learning and having that independence, you know, I mean, you get a load, it's all about you. And that's what's different. Again, if I want to compare the trucking and the line trade, is the line trade, you're dependent on other people. You know, it's not just you, you know, you're working on a crew.
Yeah.
In that truck though, it's you know, whether you get that load there on time or not, okay, weather, traffic may play, but it's you. You're responsible for that load. You sign that document. You know, when you loaded it up in California and you got to be in Massachusetts in 3 days, well, it's you. You know, you don't have a crew to help you out. So that was a big adjustment for me, going from, you know, just me, about me, you know, counting on me, to suddenly, hey, wait a minute, I've got to answer to other people, and I've got, you know, so, but again, that's the independent thing I was talking about. But as far as anything else in trucking, I mean, I guess you just learn to push yourself. I mean, I guess maybe you saw some of that, you know, when I was in climbing class. Like, I wasn't going to give up, because that's just instilled in me. Like, hey, I might not be the fastest one, but I'm going to get there. And in trucking, it was the same thing, you know, but I actually kind of was faster. It was just the foot on the pedal and not sleeping as much. And, you know, I was never, and to this day, I never did anything to stay awake. It was just a natural thing. It was just like I was born to drive that truck. And you know, I was part of it. I was one with it. And, you know, and I've been searching for that here, like in this trade, like to try to feel that same thing. And it's literally slowly coming to the point of where like I said earlier, I love where I'm at right now.
How, now, obviously you have to be disciplined to to stay up, right? You said you didn't take
Yes.
any stimulants or anything like
No,
that,
yes.
other than coffee or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so that's discipline, that's focus, right? So how do you implement that with your children? How do you share that same discipline with your children?
I think with them now,
Hmm.
I realize that kids will tune out after the first 5 minutes of you talking to them.
Hmm.
So, you know, you mentioned earlier with my wife, with me, with the apprenticeship, with my wife, with the nursing,
Hmm.
going through nursing school right now, they see what we're doing. You know, it's not the embellished story of an old man saying it 20 years from now, like, oh,
Hmm.
when I was young, you should have seen what I was doing. They're living it right now. You know, they see my wife in the room studying by herself for 8 to 10 hours a day, you know, not even coming downstairs to grab breakfast or anything,
Hmm.
you know, and then they see me leave early in the morning, you know, to go to work at 4:30. Hey, Dad, you going to come home today? I don't know. I'm not
Hmm.
sure when I'll be home. I'll be home, you know, and then we'll have the 24-hour shift. Okay. You
Hmm.
won't see me till tomorrow, you know, and I'll be sleeping all day. But I think the biggest thing is that they actually get to, as much as I've had those conversations with them about, you know, giving it your all, you know, what you put in, you get out. You know, I mean, I'm all the old, you know, cliches, you know, I've given them, you know,
Yeah.
and even made up my own. But yet I'd realized the biggest, strongest thing is the actual action of what they see. You know, what my wife and I both,
Hmm.
ironically, at the same time or coincidentally, are trying to accomplish in our lives so late in life. Which, you know, my wife and I have had this conversation of how great of an opportunity we have, you
Yeah.
know, that maybe it's, you know, I'm long gone, but it's my son who, you know, pushed his son or wanted his son to be a lineman, and my son becomes a lineman just a year after I get out of the apprenticeship or something,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm like, that I would love that. That would that would fulfill me, you know, for me to get through it and my son to follow. But you know, I don't know what path he chooses yet.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to take away. I mean, it'd be easy for me to say, like, you know, I talk to my, and I do. We
Hmm.
talk a lot because my son plays two sports. He plays basketball and football for high school. He's pretty good at basketball. He's a pretty good football player, but he just does that to stay in shape and get into a different sport because he loves football. My daughter plays volleyball. She actually played varsity volleyball as a freshman this year, so she's, you know, hopefully stays on that track.
Hmm.
Um, so me playing high school sports as well, I constantly am in their ears about how important it is, and you know,
Hmm.
to practice and to stay in shape and to eat well and choose your friends wisely because they have such a humongous impact. I mean, us as parents,
Hmm.
you know, we don't see them nearly enough compared to what their friends see them, especially once they get older and they get to go, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my kid, my friend, da, 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 or whoever and whatever. And, you know, and next thing you know, you see them for 20 minutes, but their friends were with them all day, you know, and
Hmm.
day after day that adds up. And it's the importance of having good friends. I mean, it played a huge role for me.
Yep.
I mean, not to say I was, yeah, well, I wasn't a problem child. If my mom was sitting there next to me, she'd tell you, she goes, oh, he was such a good kid. Yeah, I played basketball and my friends were good kids too. Like we just didn't get in trouble. Like, you know, it was just weird. I was very fortunate, you
Hmm.
know, and maybe a lot of that is to do with my parents and the way they brought me up because I knew how to pick, you know, the path, I guess,
Hmm.
you know, not go down that road, which would have led me somewhere else. Instead, I stayed on the straight and narrow. And
Hmm.
you know, I hope that my kids do the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
I can only go by what I see when they come over to our house. You know, my son's friends and my daughter's friends, and yeah, there's good ones and there's the ones that I'm like, well, you know, maybe not so much her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe the other one that you told me that she's getting straight A's and you know, and she's in this and this and this extracurricular, you know, student activity type thing. I'm like, hey, that's really good. Maybe you should hang out with her more often. And you know, but they're gonna choose how they choose.
Yeah.
You just hope that your influence kind of, you know, bears some weight with them.
And that's the cool thing too about being a dad is, we don't have to dictate everything that happens in their life or anything like that. But we do got to lead by that example, like what you're doing,
Yeah.
and when they see that you're a man of integrity, a man of your word, and you're actually living what you're preaching, you know, they're going to see that. They're going to start recognizing that in their friends. You know what I
Yes.
mean? When you're modeling that as a father in the house and your wife's modeling that as a mother in the house, they're going to be like, okay, you know, that doesn't register with me. That doesn't click when their friends are out of line. You know what I mean? It's going to register in their head and they're going to be like, okay, well, you know, that's not right. You know what I mean? And,
Right.
you know, our goal as fathers is to help them to make that decision, you know, to help them make wise decisions in life. You know what I mean? Because kids are going to mess up, you know, people
Yes.
are going to mess up, you know, we can't stop that, right?
Correct.
All we can do is just teach them to own up to the mistakes and learn from their mistakes, hopefully, and, you know, move on and
And try
not
not to make them twice. Yeah.
exactly. Try not to make them twice and move forward and, you know, just really guide them, I think,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, because that's the perfect word, is guide. Almost like a bumper cars. You know, they're going to bounce
Mhm.
around. They're going to hit this. They're going to hit that. But just keep them in the boundaries a little bit. You know, don't let them wander too far off and get lost in the woods. But that's why we're there. You know, that's why having a parent or both involved is so huge. You know,
Mhm.
because of the influence we really do have on them. You know, because
Mhm.
you think they're not watching, and they are.
They
They're always
are.
watching. Yes, absolutely. You know, and there's things that, like, even in our life that I know my kids have never experienced. They've never seen, you know, my wife and I argue to the point where anything physical or even a major argument, to be honest with you. So they've been fortunate that way, but I've always let them, especially my daughter, let them know, like, listen, you need to know that there is nothing okay about ever, you know, a man treating you a certain way that you don't think,
Mhm.
you know where I'm going with it. Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that I want you to know, because you haven't seen it or experienced it. It's okay, never, you know. And
Mhm.
I probably once a month that just comes out of my mouth with her, just talking to her about whatever. We'll watch a movie and just see how this girl just always goes back and da da da. That's,
Mhm.
I want you to know that's why I'm here, you know.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about that. But
A- And one of the cool things too that I've learned and stuff is just, you know, because my daughter's a teenager as well in high school, and
yeah,
just teaching them healthy boundaries. You know, when, say, for instance, as a father, you're beating your daughter down, you're talking, you know, smack to her, you're telling her horrible things, whatever, she's gonna eventually think that that's okay.
hmm,
So when a guy does that to her, she's gonna think that that's okay, you
yes,
know, versus not growing up in that environment. And all of a sudden, though, when that happens to her in the real world, that's a red flag. She's going to, you know, look at him and be like, you don't talk to me like that, and throat check the dude, or, you know what I mean? Tell the dude, you know what? I'll get my daddy. He's a journeyman lineman. He'll stomp a mud hole in you. You know what I mean?
right, right,
Or whatever, you know?
right, right.
But no, that's so important, just to mimic that good character, that character that they need to see, that's going to help them later on. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Especially when they choose a mate, you know?
yes, yeah,
But
absolutely.
I tell you what, brother, when the first day I saw you over there in that pole yard, I was like, who's this cat? You know, and I looked at you and you're about what, 6'5", 6'6"?
Yeah, almost 6'6". Yeah,
I'm looking
250, 6'6".
I'm looking at you, Vlad, and I'm like, holy smokes, that's a big dude, you know? And I just
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. I was just like super impressed with, you know, that you had the grit to get out there. And then I was like, okay, you know, and obviously, you know, we run you guys to the mill. We're trying to see who really wants this trade, because it's not for everybody,
Yes.
you
No,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, that I think I've mentioned it to you, Dave, that week was one of the tougher weeks. I
Mm-hmm.
and I've done Spartan races, Tough Mudders, different things. When I was in really good shape, CrossFit,
Mm-hmm.
challenges, just you name it. And I've been there where you got to push yourself mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helped me a ton too,
Mm-hmm.
going through this, because I know, and I would mention it to the other guys in the class. I said, always remember, your mind is going to give up way before your body does.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can push through, you will make it through. And we saw it. You were there that first day that the one kid quit right in the middle
Yeah.
of climbing, just
Mm-hmm.
walked down the bottom and he was done. And big guy like me, but mentally, you know, he could have done it, but he
Mhm.
didn't want it. And again, you said it earlier, you know, who wants it bad enough?
Mhm.
Nobody there wanted it more than me, because I knew what I was going up against.
Mhm.
So, you know, and you know, I'm the guy that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
had all the odds stacked against you.
yes, they were.
You
Yes, they
know?
were. You know, and when you guys were asking me if I was fine and how am I doing, my answer was always the same. I'm good. I'm
Mhm.
good. But inside, I wasn't.
Inside, you're all broken up, man.
Oh, I'm ripped apart.
Now, you're 51, Vlad. What
Yes.
inspired you to just come into the trade, brother, if you don't mind me asking?
You know, it was a neighbor friend of mine
Mhm.
that so this is back in 2015, and he'd always brought up like, oh, you need to come work with me. And I was just like, well, you know, I'm good where I'm at. I like trucking. I enjoy it. I'm home every night. He goes, well, you'll be home every night. You know, I could put you in the yard. You can just learn the material. You know, man, you'll be a good yard guy. I know how you are meticulous with stuff. I don't know. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
you know, and then just one thing led to another. I went in one day to the boss I had down there for 10 years, and I said,
Mhm.
hey, basically I was asking for a raise, and he told me, yeah, we can't do it right now. And I thought, well, I've been with you 10 years, been pretty much making the same amount of money, salary,
Mhm.
good money, you know, good benefits, but you won't even give me a raise, huh? Okay. And my mind literally just went into that was the reason I needed. Like it it wasn't like, well, this is going to be way better. This is like this is the change I want to make right now.
Mhm.
And I did. And I made that change. And I worked as a yard guy for 2 years with Hotline,
Mhm.
got my groundman ticket, spent a little time on a 60 crew actually as a groundman, which was really hard. And especially knowing nothing about the job itself, you know, just I knew the material, but
Mhm.
working as a groundman, I knew nothing about. And that was like being thrown to the dogs. And I did that for a few months. And then me and another groundman that were down there started hole digging down there. And we did that. I did that and back and forth on a crew for the next just over a year, I guess.
Mhm.
And that puts us around 2018. And I actually applied for the apprenticeship then. So in May of 2018, I applied, but it was more of I'm applying because I don't want to be a groundman and really a hole digger. And I've done a lot of the hole digging,
Mhm.
but I didn't think my reasoning was like strong, I guess you could say. It was almost like, well, I'm going to give this a try type of thing.
Yeah.
But as I was applying for the apprenticeship, I also was getting letters of recommendation from some people. And the guy who had originally hired me, I got a letter from him and he called me. He asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm digging out in Santa Barbara. I said, we're doing 510s. And I said, it's costing me money to work right now, it feels like, because I'm not getting enough hours. And I'm driving 90 miles each way in my truck. So between fuel and not enough hours, I'm like, I'm just not enjoying myself, to be honest with you. I said, I don't mind the digging. I said, but just dealing with the traffic and coming home from Santa Barbara. And he offered me a job up north in 1245. It was a surge arrestor project. Offered me better scale than groundman, offered me double per diem, a company truck. And I'm like, holy cow. And all I had to do was go out and get my crane cert, which I did like in 2 weeks. I flew to
Mhm.
Dallas and got my crane cert. And I took that opportunity, which kind of sidetracked the whole apprenticeship thing because this opportunity was so good for me. I thought, man, maybe I can just skate through the next 15 to 20 years of my life doing something like this, quality control, you know.
Mhm.
But while I was up there, I did that. I was with Cupertino Electric up there for almost 3 years. It was
Mm.
prior to just coming back here, prior to coming to Hampton Tedder and applying. I actually applied for the apprenticeship when I was still up there in Cupertino because at some point last year, I just made the decision. I said, no, this life is not for me as far as being a QC guy, working in the yard. I know I can just be that guy, that old guy that works in the yard, and somebody will probably pay me maybe even operator scale. And I'm like, but there's no ambition, there's no goal, there's no sense of, I don't feel like I'm part of that brotherhood. I think that was the biggest thing
Mhm.
was even though I was making as good money as QC, I wasn't one of those guys, you know, I wasn't
Mhm.
a journeyman lineman. And suddenly that became this like mantra of mine. Like, I want to become a journeyman lineman. Okay, what do I got to do? Okay.
Mhm.
They weren't taking it, you know, there was no new classes because of COVID. So that whole year kind of got wiped out until I found out that the new class was opening up, or the new interviews were coming in. I'm sorry, application process. So I applied. Not only did I apply, I drove down to Riverside, or to the JATC, and I was there physically at 3 a.m. in the morning to be one of the first ones to hand in my application, because I thought, there's nothing, I'm not cutting any, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to shortchange myself on this one. I'm going to physically hand this in. And when that interview comes, hopefully I'm one of the first, which I was. And I got ranked 29th. But then what I saw was, after the different waves of interviews would come in, my little ranking would go up and down, up and down, up and down, up until I was like 84. And that's when I got the call to come into the apprenticeship, for climbing class. And I was nervous as heck because I'm like, this is real now. Like, and everybody that's worked with me knows, like, hey, you need to, start climbing. I'm like, I know, but like, where? I can't just go to a random pole and start climbing. I can do it at work. And it just, at the end of a day, after working 12 to 16 to 24 hours, I was just, I'm beat. And I never want to sit there and say, I'm an old guy, that's why I'm not doing it. No, I was just beat. I mean, I come home and I want to rest. And when I'm home, I literally just rest to get ready for the next day. And so when I showed up at climbing class, I was, looking out at those poles. I thought, oh, this is it right here. I'm either doing it or I'm not. And there's no chance in hell that I'm not, because I'm not going back to work being that guy that didn't get through. And I'm never going to sit there and say, well, because I was an older guy. Oh, BS. You either want it or you don't. And like I told you, there was nobody in that group of 13 that were left that wanted it more than me. And I'm not doing it. Everybody has their reason. I guess we can tie all this together. Seeing my kids see me do this meant everything to me. And there was no way I was ever going to let them down. They may have said to me, oh, Dad, don't worry. I know you tried hard, but it wouldn't have been okay with me. So, it meant everything to me that they were here to see this, to witness it. I talked to my wife every night. I had a couple friends I would call after class, especially Wednesday. Wednesday was the hardest day. Wednesday is that day that you assign, I'm pretty sure, on purpose to just, hey, we're trying to weed out everybody. And see that old guy over there? Well, yeah, that old guy wasn't having it. And I know it felt like, you were waiting and waiting. And I remember coming off the pole and we'd be just talking about, and I'm like, my hands on my knees, which is probably the worst thing I could do. And I'm like, I think I'm going to pass out, but I can't tell them. But I'm really like gasping for air right now. And I know they're going to have me go right back up that pole again. So I might as well just suck it up and get ready. And of course, there we went again. And I just, I would talk to my son about it. And I just told him, I'm like, I hope you get to experience this one day, but just know that you absolutely, positively can do it. You just have to want to do it. Because if I did it, there's nobody that can't do it. How about that? I mean, there's nobody that really can't do it. No, do they want to do it? That's another thing. I didn't give myself another option. I knew that I could easily just wade down at the groundman level and just be whatever, or use my crane cert and go be an operator. But no, I want that journeyman lineman ticket. I want to be that guy.
And that's that mindset, your mindset, like you talked about earlier, you don't mind, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That's a saying that we had in the military, and it holds true even in the line work. You know what I mean? It's when you're on top of that pole, and you're changing out a transformer, it's a blizzard, and you're thinking to yourself, what in the hell am I doing? You know what I mean? You're freezing your butt off and all these different things. You got to just put your mind somewhere else, get the job done, you know what I mean? And be safe, and that's the really cool thing about our trade, and just you having that mindset. And I like what you said too, about how what's stopping other people from doing this. You're 51 years old and you're in good shape, I thought you're in pretty good shape, and all your tough mutters and everything you do, you know what I mean? That's some hard stuff, you know what I mean? But climbing is one of those things, like wrestling. You can run, you can do burpees, you can lift weights, you can do all these different things. But unless you're actually dealing and doing with the actual movement that climbing has involved in, There's nothing like it. There's no exercise that's going to mimic it at all, unless you're climbing.
You're absolutely right.
You know?
Yeah.
But I just want to talk to you a little bit about, what you said about your children and just being that example to them. Dude, I just want to commend you because your courage and boldness that you and your wife are both displaying to them, just showing them that, hey, if you have dreams, to go after them. I mean, that's a testament. And that's really why I asked you to come on to this podcast, because I thought that was so unique and important for other fathers to see that, hey, your kids are looking at you and it's never too late for you to be that role model in their life.
Right. We kind of glossed over my wife, but she's a big part of my inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
She's been in this for 2.5 years now, 3 years. So while I was away, I was away from home 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was up in Cupertino Electric working up there. I'd come home on weekends and either drive back, fly back, depending on what yard I was at, where I was working. And she's always been one to support me. I'm super fortunate. And a lot of this wouldn't be possible if I didn't have a wife like her that was open to, me chasing after a goal or a dream that I want to become at this age. Because she could easily be like, hey, just do what you're doing here. Just be close to home. The kids are in school, blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, at the same time, she's going through her thing and I'm seeing what she's going through. And I'm like, if she can become that person, then I know I can become that person. So a lot of it is just like a mutual respect, I guess, we have for each other too. And going through this kind of at the same time we're 7 years apart, but we're doing it at the same time. She's chasing something and I'm chasing something.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a neat thing. And again, tying back into my kids, they're seeing it. It's not a story that I'm going to tell 25 years from now as an old grandpa, that I might change a little bit about how I, went up and down the pole. I did my 4 up downs in 4 minutes. I might, embellish it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
oh yeah.
But they actually see it. They saw me come home barely walking.
Mm-hmm.
They know what climbing class is all about. They see my wife not sleeping much or literally falling asleep with the books on her or coming downstairs to get away from me snoring upstairs to do her work down here. And that's my inspiration. So I think both of us together are hopefully showing some good examples for our kids.
Yeah, there ain't no doubt in my mind, bro. Your kids are definitely getting the whole thing there, right there. You know what I mean? You're living proof of what a man and woman who are focused, that there's nothing you can't accomplish. You know what I mean? And I think that's awesome, brother.
Yeah. Thank you.
What I wanted to ask you, brother, last question is, what are your aspirations for your children? What do those look like?
It's funny because they see what we're going through right now. And I guess my biggest conversation with them about this is, I don't want you guys to be chasing your dreams so late, your goals.
Mm.
I didn't even know about the line trade, if not for my neighbor, I don't know about it. It's, my neighbor introduced me to it, with nursing with my wife. I mean, my wife's been a bartender since I met her. Mm-hmm. She came here. I met her in 2002 and we got married in 2004. She mm-hmm. still works at the same bar that I met her at. It's gone under different ownership, but she's worked, like her work gave us the advantage of never needing daycare, because when the kids were younger, she would work night shifts and she was with them. I would come home at night. I was with the kids. So it's weird how the timing of our lives kind of coincided to actually benefit us, because I was home every day, but I was home at night. Mm-hmm. My wife would work at night, but, was with the kids during the day. So no daycare, didn't cost us that extra money. Plus we had, the influence of my wife being around her all the time, or around them. I don't want them to work as hard as I have to, Mm-hmm. And I mean, I could easily choose the easier road, because it's not about the money anymore for me. It's definitely about really that sense of brotherhood. Mm-hmm. And I want my son to experience that, but I also, I will understand if it's not something he wants to do. My daughter, she wants to be a therapist, and I've told her, I mean, she has a great opportunity because my kids both have dual citizenships because mm-hmm. of my wife. So they're both Czech Republic citizens and US citizens. Mm-hmm. So for my daughter, she's already talked about wanting to go to school in Prague. to study there at an American university there.
Mhm.
And I said, that'd be fantastic. I'm like, you have family there, you can stay there. We have an apartment in Prague, which you could stay actually. I'm like, you would be set. Like, if that's something you want to do, but start focusing on it now, while you're in high school, start planning for that move. I mean, enjoy your high school, but think of that so you can chase after these goals and dreams way sooner than your mom and I are doing.
Mhm.
I mean,
I know.
I just hope that they're better than, I don't know if better is the word. There's probably a better, more, and I don't even know if successful is the word that I could use, but maybe be successful sooner. I think my wife and I have been successful in life through our friendships, our relationships, our jobs. I think all of that has made us who we are, obviously, but I just wish they can get an earlier start on that,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, for sure. And it's really cool though that there's no excuse. You mimic that for them. There's no excuse. You know what I mean? And that's what you and your wife have both showed them,
Yeah. Yes.
There ain't no doubt in my mind they're going to be successful, and I wish you the best of luck in your career. And I know you're starting off, and you got a while to go.
Yes, I do.
Keep your head up, keep paying attention to detail, and just keep up the hard work, Vlad. I mean, it was an inspiration just getting to meet you and just being able to deal with you on the pole yard and teach you some things. And, just keep it up, brother.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. I was really taken aback when you asked me to want to be on here. I did my research, found out all about the Show Up Dad. I thought, wow, this is a great podcast. This is something that means a lot for me, for you to ask me to be on. It meant a great deal to me. So I really do appreciate you for that.
Absolutely, Vlad. And once again, thank you for coming on here, bro, and just sharing everything, to our audience. I know it's going to encourage a lot of fathers out there, just be better, like we're trying to do here on this podcast. So, letting them know that they're more than just a paycheck,
Yeah, absolutely.
And once again, thank you. Thank you to my homie. I want to do a shout out real quick to my buddy, Justin G. You can follow him on Instagram. He's got the Trade brand, and he's doing some great things for hardworking blue collar dads out there. All work, no handouts. Follow him. He's got a awesome merchandise that he just put out there. And once again, this is David from the Show Up Dad with my guest, Vladimir. Thank you once again for coming on, and keep being that Show Up Dad and keep being more than just a paycheck, guys. Thank you.